Starting to feel like Groundhog's Day around here, Lane, and the Cowboys lose again to the 49ers. We'll break it down on this episode of the Locked On Cowboys podcast.
You are Locked On Cowboys, your daily Dallas Cowboys podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use promo code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Welcome back. I am your host, Marcus Mosher. You can follow me on Twitter at Marcus_Mosher. Joining me today, as always, is Landon McCool. You can follow him on Twitter at McCoolBCB. Landon, the Cowboys lose again. For whatever reason, the bye week did not cure all of their problems and all of their ailments. The Cowboys lose 30-24 in a really weird game because the Cowboys jumped out to a 10-3 lead, and it felt like, okay, this thing is starting to settle down a little bit. And then I believe the 49ers scored 27 straight points or something like that.
It's 24.
24 straight points. Cowboys battled back, actually had a chance to win this game in regulation,
right,
and did not gain another yard. So I don't know whether to feel feel good that they battled back. I don't know whether to feel bad that it got so ugly to begin with. I don't know how to feel other than just general disappointment.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I think general disappointment is a good one, right? But I listen. Part of me is like, this is just shows you where the state of this team is. Honestly, is that I was glad to just not see them blown out. You know, like I mean,
and I tweeted that like it was another non-competitive fourth quarter, and it actually became one late in the late in the quarter.
It did, and I actually really appreciated that they put in the effort and fought back and put themselves in a position. But it doesn't make me feel good about this team because once again, like, look, I mean, the problem is that we go into this game, we know that this defense is compromised. And in fact, it probably, as of Sunday morning, is more compromised than we even imagined because Carson wasn't even playing despite practicing all week, right? And then we find out that the starting running back isn't playing. That's part of another segment later that we'll talk about. But it just, it started, the vibes around the team just at that point, it just started to really kind of snowball. And then the slate of games that went through the early in the afternoon games didn't fall the Cowboys' way, certainly for lining up their playoff chances. So all this is to say is that you go into the game with just incredibly bad vibes. It's like you go into the bye and things just kind of continually got worse, and it all kind of crescendos before game time. And then somehow you manage to get into halftime with a 10-3 lead. It was a 10-3, I think, right? Or 10-6, maybe?
10-6. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I thought that was about as good a first half outcome as you could have. Right.
Yeah.
It was just a roller coaster of a game. And then obviously the third quarter happened and it felt like the game was completely out of hand. And then obviously, as you mentioned, it got within a 6-point game at a certain point with the Cowboys having an opportunity with the ball in their hands with just over 2 minutes and some change to go down and win the game. Not like tie it up, but go score a touchdown and win the game. And obviously a disappointment in the offense, ineptitude in the offense reared its ugly head again as the Cowboys go 0 for 4. Just not just a 3 out, a 4 out. Just really just depressing, sad stuff. Really.
So we're going to talk about the offense and the defense and all that stuff. We're going to do some big picture stuff now.
Mm-hmm.
Even on the final drive of the game when the Cowboys had a chance to win it, I felt numb, almost to the point of like, hey, this is cool if they pull it off, but like, this isn't a good team. Like, and it's a weird spot to be in. And you and I were talking pre-show, like, this isn't a fun Cowboy team to watch. I don't think they're very good, as evident by their record in their last couple of games. They are in a spot that you and I have really never been in before covering this team over the last 7 or 8 years, where they've basically been highly competitive in every season. And then the seasons that they weren't, 2020, was because of a big injury. Like, yes, they have Micah Parsons hurt, but they have their quarterback healthy. They have the entire offensive line healthy. CeeDee Lamb's healthy. they're just not very good.
I think my brand, as long as I've been doing this or talking about the Cowboys or talking about football, and I'm going to continue to bring it up, to me, is I think context matters, right? And this is why, imagine how much better you would feel about the performance you've seen from this season, right? If at the beginning of the season, the front office talked to you and was just straightforward, said, "Hey, this is a rebuilding year. We're doing a soft rebuild. We're trying to get some money cleared off of our contracts. We're trying to reset the things around here and kind of reload." You know, obviously you can't say all that because you guys have guys on 1-year contracts and you know, Mike McCarthy on a 1-year contract. But I think that there are other ways to sort of just kind of imply that this is a year, a regathering year, as opposed to all in and say all the things that they said before the season, right? I think that part of the issue here is that this team is clearly going through a kind of, like we've talked about, soft rebuild. They're playing like it, and because the expectations being said by everyone in the building are no, we're competing to try to win a Super Bowl this year, and we're trying to win the NFC East, and then they're putting this out on the field. It's gaslighting, and it feels offensive, and it makes us all very angry. But the truth of the matter is that that's clearly what's happening here, and that's why we talk about this. This team just isn't very talented. They're just not quite.
They were a team that wasn't super deep, and they couldn't afford injuries, and then they just got a bunch of them on defense. Even more in this game, right? Like 4 defensive ends. You were without 3 corners at one point. Like.
And the defense was frankly the side that may have played better, all things speaking, considering what they had to go up against.
The expectations,
right?
Yeah.
Like the expectations, like that. And I think that's really the big problem, right? Is that the defense has an excuse, right? They're down 4 defensive ends and 2 corners in this game, right? Against, you know, against a Kyle Shanahan offense. The offense has not had an excuse for the most part, you know, and at least you got a positive CD Dak performance out of this game. I think CD tied, if not broke, his receptions record for in game. But I mean, obviously, almost nothing else about this game makes you feel great about the offense moving forward. I mean, I think the running game just looked minorly better, but I think that was mostly just San Francisco having, you know, their own depth issues. So. Yeah, not a lot to hang your hat on unless you have Dak and CD in your fantasy team.
Yeah, and again, we'll talk about the defense, but think about how low our expectations are for the Cowboys defense, where they give up 470 yards of offense. They allow 30 points, create 0 turnovers, and we're fairly happy with how they performed on that side of the ball. Like, that's where we're at.
I mean, they contained the disaster, which I thought would just spread like 3 Mile Island. They contained the disaster to just basically the third and the beginning of the fourth quarter, which you know, they got almost all that offense that you're talking about. I mean, not all of it, but they got most of that offense all just in, like, you know, 4 drives in the beginning of the second half. So and then drives, I think, that would also corresponded with the Cowboys, I think, doing 5 3-and-outs, or at least 5 drives where they came away with no points, and at least 3 3-and-outs in a row, really putting the defense, you know, in a terrible position, and you know, they just eventually broke.
Yeah. Again, big picture things. Cowboys are 3-4 now, and I believe their next 5 games are against teams with winning records.
Yeah.
I watched football all day, Layden. Teams just, you could stack them up compared to the other teams in the NFC. They're just not as talented, and frankly, they're just not as good. Like, this is not a playoff team. Now, maybe something happens, something clicks, like we saw in 2018, that, you know, that right before they got Amari Cooper, they were 3-5 and things took off. But I have a hard time seeing that happening again.
And I think the other thing to kind of keep in mind is that, you know, based on what all the other things that we talked about before, I don't think they're going to make huge efforts to try to improve the team.
No.
Right. No. So I think the improvements that are coming from this team are by the players that are on this team. So, and I don't know that that's going to be enough to, like, you know, turn the season around. I think the hope is that you're getting guys up and getting guys ready for, you know, seasons in the future, and getting these young players some experience.
All right, let's talk about the Cowboys offense. They scored 24 points in this game. Most of it came in the fourth quarter, 14 points in the fourth quarter. I want to have a conversation about Dak Prescott, who had a very up and down night. We will get to that next. This episode is brought to you by LinkedIn. When you're hiring for your small business, you want to find quality professionals that are right for the role. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to help you hire the right professional for your team faster and for free. LinkedIn isn't just another job board. LinkedIn helps you hire professionals that you can't find anywhere else, even those who aren't actively searching for a new job, but might be open to the perfect role. In any given month, over 70% of LinkedIn users don't visit other leading job sites. So if you're not looking on LinkedIn, you're looking in the wrong place. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. That is linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. This episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. Prize Picks is the best place to get real money sports action. With over 10 million members and billions of dollars in award winnings, Prize Picks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. You just have to pick more or less on at least two players for a shot to win up to 100 times your cash. Run your game all season long on Prize Picks. Prize Picks is the best way to get action on sports in most states, including California, Florida, Georgia, and Texas. And Prize Picks is also the only real money daily fantasy sports platform with an injury insurance policy. So your lineups stay in play, even if one of your players gets injured. If your player leaves in the first half and doesn't return, Prize Picks keeps your lineup alive. Go download the Prize Picks app today and use promo code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, run your game. Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast. We're going to break down Dak Prescott's performance. And before I talk about him, I want to mention Atlanta. The Cowboys really had no running game in this one. 19 for 56, and that includes an 11-yard run from Kevontae Turpin. Ezekiel Elliott averaged 3.4 yards per carry. Dalvin Cook, despite tearing it up in Cowboys practice, according to Tom Pelissaro, 6 carries for 12 yards. The receivers dropped passes. The receivers were not getting open. But I thought Dak Prescott played a really bad game today. Really bad. He had 2 interceptions. One of the interceptions was the downfield throw early in the game, which he just didn't need to make. He had another interception on a third down pass to, was it Lenore, I believe. Again, I don't know what he was looking at. And then he had a throw on the first play of the last drive that could have been intercepted by 2 different players.
Oh, man.
I don't want to be one of these people that say like, hey, Dak Prescott's robbing the Cowboys of $60 million a year. That's not true or whatever. However, I need my star quarterback to play like a good half, like a full half every once in a while. And it just hasn't really happened this year.
Yeah, I think it's fair, right? And I do think that it's I understand why you sort of prefaced this whole conversation, because every time that we have this conversation about Dak, it feels like we are it feels like we are attacked because we are attacking Dak, when that's not the case. I think we've seen Dak play good football this season, like, you know what I'm saying? At different points. I think the problem has been stringing together, like you said, a whole quarter, a whole half of positive play, and obviously, as we have pointed out, and as we're going to continue to point out, this is not all on Dak. I mean, this is probably maybe the worst cast of folks that he's had around him since the 2016 season, 2017 season. So I think that the issue is that in the moments when Dak has opportunities, he's not always taking advantage of them. And I think it's the stuff like what you talked about. I don't like sprint out passes either. I'm not a big fan of that, but that doesn't mean that Dak needs to throw that ball just don't throw the ball. And the first interception as well. It's like, I get it. Like, it's a tough toss to kind of send Turpin down to the sideline and to kind of make those throws. But don't throw it.
No,
like
it's first down.
It's lived. Yeah, exactly. It's first down, live to die, play another down. And I just think that's the issue I have, is that we've talked about it before. And this is what I kind of concerns with me with him long-term, is that there's just times when it feels like he has to press. And when he does that, it's like there are times when it's great, and then there are times when he can't control it, right? He's not checking underneath. The thing, it's the real one that concerned me was that last one that you mentioned. I'm glad you brought it up because it was an interception, but really it was an interception because Fred Warner broke it up from Lenore, who was going to intercept that pass. Like Dak has a real problem with checking the underneath defenders to make sure that he's getting enough of an arch over his passes to clear the second level. And those passes that he's trying to fit it between the linebackers and the safeties. Like it seems like it's over and over again that we get into these tight spots. He's looking CD's way on an in-breaking route, and it's Dak's throwing the ball with not enough arch to it, not enough touch. And he throws it right to a linebacker underneath that he doesn't think can drop into that spot. It's like, I guess the thing that concerns me about it is that it does seem like it's Groundhog's Day. You brought it up, right? It's like it seems like it's the same thing over and over. It's the same issue where Dak is pressing, where he's forgetting to check the underneath coverage, and he's pressing and he's pushing the ball into tight windows, which again, I admit, sometimes creates incredible results.
It does.
But more and more, it's creating interceptions and turnovers when a team certainly can't afford it. I just wish there were times when he knew how to play a little bit more of a conservative brand of football, and then just to kind of protect his defense a little bit.
I understand why he's been feeling that way, but with the way the defense played against the Lions 2 weeks ago, he probably does feel like we've got to score every possession. However, it's 1st and 10 at San Francisco's 45-yard line. The score is 3-0 at the end of the first quarter. Like, this game has not gotten out of hand yet where you have to be throwing YOLO balls. Like, if it's not there, and I know Chris Collinsworth was saying how he wasn't able to get all of it into it because he was getting hit.
But he knew that safety was there.
And the thing is, all the safety would have done is back up a little bit more. Like that, it wasn't there. And that's okay. Like, it's a first down play. Turf it, and let's go to 2nd and 10 from the 45. Maybe you get a field goal on that drive, or maybe you get a big play and it's a touchdown. Like, you can't win the game on one throw in the first quarter. Too often, it feels like Dak is trying to do that.
And the reason we know that he would have he knew that safety was there and he threw it either way, he didn't care, is because he threw that same ball later in the game perfectly to Turpin, and Turpin didn't catch the ball. Now, obviously, you're sitting here going, isn't that proof that he should have thrown the ball? No, the problem was, and maybe this is a play calling issue as well. But I think the issue is that they were so afraid of themselves in like the red zone that they're like trying this unnecessary stuff when they're moving the ball well, throwing into double coverage with the 5'7" receiver up the sideline. They're doing that because they have to, because they don't have anybody else to do it. They don't have Brandon Cooks or whomever to go up. Not that, he's 5'8" or 5'9". I guess the point is that they're doing this out of desperation, not because they needed to throw that pass. Like it just feels like they're pressing and they're making poor decisions, whether it's a play call or the quarterback pulling the trigger on that. Just check it down or throw it away,
The other thing I want to mention is now Dak did bounce back from that. The next drive was 11 plays, 65 yards, and a touchdown. 49ers went turnover on downs. Dallas got 8 plays, 46 yards, and a field goal. Now, I think they got a little too conservative in the red zone on that drive. Listen to these next drives: 3 plays, 7 yards, punt, and that was a bad punt because they only took off 28 seconds of the clock right before halftime. They gave the 49ers another chance to get points. Luckily, the defense held. 3 plays, 6 yards, interception. 3 plays, 6 yards, punt. 3 plays, 3 yards, punt. Their next drive didn't start until midway through the fourth quarter. I don't know what's happened to this offense where they go now basically 30 minutes of game time without being able to get a first down.
Yeah, and that's the thing, is that, like we've talked about, is that we've seen Dak and this offense put together some good offense at times. You talked about the run game. Before halftime, I think Zeke was averaging over 5 yards a carry, if I'm not mistaken. Like, and it's like at times they can manage to string it together, and then like they go through a whole quarter where it's an absolute disaster, which somehow also always seems to kind of correspond with a letdown on the defensive side as well, right? And so these teams like Baltimore did the same thing, right? Where they put up a ton of points all at once very quickly, and suddenly the game feels completely out of whack and completely out of reach. Then the Cowboys find a way to kind of claw their way back into it, and then they get themselves into a position to win the game. And unlike other Cowboys teams in the past, and I think this is the real difference, is that I just, in 2021, in 2022, 2023, when we got into those situations, I trusted that Dak Prescott was going to win us the game or get us close to the position of winning the game. And more likely than not, now in 2024 season, it's like an anemic, embarrassing performance where they can't even, not only can they not even achieve a first down, they can't even achieve a completion, to win the game. And it's like, it's part of it is a talent question. And I want to make sure that we're not like putting this all on Dak Prescott. It's absolutely not all on Dak Prescott. But the parts that like where you need him to be smart and like protect the rest of his team, that works both ways. You have to be aggressive sometimes to help them win, but you also have to be conservative to protect your team. And he's not doing that all the time.
Yeah. I mean, we saw today, Malik Willis and the Packers went 7 plays, 64 yards in a minute and a half to win the game, right? Like got it done. Jaden Daniels obviously had the Hail Mary. Jacoby Brissett went like 11 plays, 70 yards to get the game-winning touchdown against the Jets. Like we've seen quarterbacks with not a lot of talent or bad quarterbacks thrive in that situation. And the Cowboys, for whatever reason, just can't get it done. Again, I understand that the Cowboys on offense they don't have the same talent that they've had over the last couple of years. But you need your star quarterback to kind of elevate your talent and make them look better than what they are. And unfortunately, which player on their offense right now do you think is playing at their potential or even anywhere close to it? Is it CD and that's it?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how much better Jalen Tolbert's going to get, and maybe this is just who he is,
Yeah.
But it's clearly not enough certainly not to be wide receiver 2 at this point, and I think that's the issue. I think the other part too is that we've seen Dak do more with less. It feels
yes.
Right. So that's what's disappointing.
They just need him to play better. I mean, honestly, that's just it. He needs to play better.
Yeah. CD, I think it was CD's turn to the barrel last week for his play. I think he played a great game. And I think, Dak had points. I don't want to call this a terrible Dak game because I think there was long stretches of time where he was playing great. I just need him to, I just need to kind of compress the roller coaster a little bit. It can't be so up and down and just, sometimes you just got to take a sack or throw the ball away. It feels like we don't see Dak do that. It's either he almost makes an incredible throw he shouldn't have made into double coverage that almost also gets intercepted or does get intercepted, or it's a roller coaster just constantly. Just be smart with the ball on offense and maybe something good will happen.
All right, let's talk about that defense that allowed 30 points again this week. We'll talk about that unit next. This episode is brought to you by Game Time. I absolutely love Game Time for so many different reasons, but Game Time now has a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets to see your favorite teams play live even easier. Game Picks filters out the fluff to show you only the incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste your time searching through thousands of tickets. One of my favorite parts about Game Time is that they'll show you your seats like a panoramic view, so you don't even need to guess. I know a lot of times when you used to have to buy tickets before, you would look at the row, you look at the section, and you guess what your view looks like. In the Game Time app, you're going to know exactly what your seats look like. It's absolutely fantastic. Plus, they have the lowest price guarantee, or Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time Picks. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use promo code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem promo code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time. Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. For your second listen, check out the new Locked On NFL show. 2 shows every single day, one in the morning with Tyler Rowland, one in the afternoon with Tony Wiggins. Probably the only other 2 Locked On hosts that know what we're going through right now. Find Locked On NFL on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. All right, Landon, let's talk about the defense. 470 yards allowed, 30 points, 20. Here's what's crazy. Here's the points they allowed by quarter. 3 in the first quarter, 3 in the second quarter, 3 in the fourth quarter, 21 in the third quarter. It's kind of the story of this game.
Yeah, I mean that's exactly the story of this game, and honestly, like before we give the defense too much credit, for the first half, it felt like a lot of what was going on was San Francisco shooting themselves in the foot, right? Penalties on early parts of the down, just drops. It feels like we had at least half a dozen. It felt like Debo drops at certain points. He certainly didn't. He had a good game, but he certainly didn't look 100%, right?
Yeah.
And I think just kind of miscues by Brock Purdy at different times. That really was kind of what was stopping San Francisco's offense early in this game anyways. I mean, this defense came in shorthanded. Look, to say that the least. I mean, without Carson coming into play, you just got another week of Amani, who ended up also himself getting injured a little bit later in the game. So you really got down. So it was basically just Booth, and I think Jordan Lewis was playing outside corner some. So, you knew that this was going to be a shorthanded situation. So the fact that you got out of the first half the way you did was an opportunity, right? And then the dam broke a little bit. The dam broke a lot after the half, right? Yeah. Immediately, the first few plays, I think Garando got like something like over 30 yards on 2 carries, the first 2 carries, right? And then, I think they got saved a little bit by some penalties here and there again. But this could have been way worse if San Francisco had kind of come out with a little bit better rhythm early in this game, because once they kind of tightened things up and they figured out specifically where to attack and some of these kind of crossing over route stuff with Kittle, they found a little bit something in the run game. It started to break open pretty badly, and it was to the point where you just knew once San Francisco was going to get the ball in the third quarter, they were going to put points on the board, and there wasn't much Dallas was going to be able to do to stop them.
One of the things that was very apparent in this game is the Cowboys are just not athletic enough in the secondary. I mean, they had guys that were just pulling away from the Cowboys defenders. We can mention Donovan Wilson if you'd like. Donovan Wilson had a horrible game. I didn't think Malik Hooker was much better. As we get further on in the season, Landon, I think they have to start thinking about playing some younger guys. And yeah. I know they're already doing that on the defensive line because they've had no choice, but I think they need to start considering it in the secondary as well.
Well, I think the problem is that, they've been having to play those guys so much on special teams, to try to win the game because they're their best special teams players too. But now I think, they don't really have a choice. They need to see what some of these other guys can do on defense because, I mean, look, Kittle came into this game with a hurt foot. We weren't even sure if he was going to play. I think he was questionable, if I'm not mistaken. Yep. And he was pulling away from Wilson when he got the ball. Like Wilson wasn't able to catch up with
multiple times.
Yeah. So, I just think that you're going to have to figure out what you've got in someone like Wanye Thomas. And even if you just don't, maybe you aren't doing both. Maybe it's not Bell and Thomas that you're getting, but you need to start rotating these guys in even more than you have, at least one of them, right? To start to see if you can kind of get some better athleticism on the back end of this defense, because you're right. Like they just look slow. And when you add in a component of like being shorthanded at one of the corner spots too, it's just too much, especially with the fact that the Cowboys have no pass rush. Guys are just getting behind this defense too quickly.
Yeah. I mean, they had, I think, 1 sack in this game. Maybe 2. I think 1.
I think one of they fell down. He fell down.
Yeah. We should talk about their run defense again because it's so they gave up 184 to the Lions 2 weeks ago. In this game, 223 to the 49ers. Like we're just getting into a point where like 175 rushing yards a game against Dallas is just the norm. And this is, I don't know when it's going to get better because the 49ers weren't even running the ball that well this season. No Christian McCaffrey. Jordan Mason left this game early, and they absolutely dominated on the ground.
Yeah. I mean, they were averaging 6.5 per pop the whole game. I was shocked that they weren't running the ball more early in the game. But honestly, I say that, but I feel like I say that every time I see a Shanahan coached team.
Yeah.
It's like they're having incredibly efficient running game, just not calling it very much. So, and honestly, that's kind of what saved the Cowboys because they just had no answer for that at all.
I mean, they did average 10 yards per passing attempt too. So it wasn't like
That's
they
true.
weren't
That's
it
fair.
wasn't like they weren't as efficient throwing the ball. Again, 470 yards of offense in this one. I mean, I know, listen, Micah Parsons is their best defensive player. You can make a case he's the best defensive player in the league. I even wonder, like, you bring Parsons back, it's not going to solve all the problems they have. Like they're in a rough spot on defense.
No, but I think if you can bring back Parsons and Bland and Carson, that moves the needle,
Yes.
right? Like,
Yes.
but not enough to like necessarily turn the season around completely. But if you can get that fixed and then this fixed, maybe something can happen. Look, lots of doom and gloom is going to happen this week, but I also think that, as we said before, anything can happen as it has before. I think the Cowboys are just gonna play it out. But I also would not expect for them to make huge efforts to try to beat the trade deadline to improve this team for this season.
So we're going to break down this game all week. We'll get you ready for the Falcon game next week. But big picture,
Hmm.
do you think it's more likely that things get better or things continue to spiral?
I mean, I think it's more likely that things spiral. I mean, honestly, you and I were talking about it, and as much as I continue to say the ball is oblong and anything can happen, if the Cowboys lose next week to Atlanta, which I mean they're not going to be favored,
Nope.
if they lose next week to Atlanta, then you have to think that their season is pretty much over, right? Like, I mean, it would put them out of the NFC East race pretty far.
I wonder if they start becoming sellers at that point.
Yeah, I mean, the wild card race would be out of touch because you've lost to two of your competitors in the wild card race, right? And I just think that at that point, it becomes probably even more apparent where the season is heading. Even the most diehard, we got to win this season fan and member of that front office is going to try to start becoming sellers, I think, for next season.
We're going into week 9. The Cowboys are 3 games back in the division already. They are 2.5 games back from the 7th seed in the NFC. Like, they've got a lot of ground to make up. Now, they do have a bunch of games coming up against NFC opponents, including the Falcons, the Eagles. They've got 2 games still left against the Commanders. I just don't think they're good, Landon. I think that's the biggest problem.
That's the issue, right? Is that they need to be a better team. They need to have shown us more at this point to show us that they could turn this thing around. And the problem is they're in a bad spot and they haven't shown us that they can turn this around.
All right, that is it for today's show. We want to thank you for making Locked On Cowboys your first listen every single day. Go check out the YouTube channel. We post videos every day over there. Go download the podcast wherever you get your podcasts. We are free and available on all platforms. Follow Landon on Twitter at McCoolBCB. I'm at Marcus_Mosher. Buckle up for what's going to be a crazy week for the Dallas Cowboys. We'll see you guys back here on Tuesday.